Welcome back to Twin Chat. We are excited you are here to join us as we have real conversations with real people focusing on well being. Hi, I'm Kenan McCumber, mom of two and teacher living in Bend, Oregon.
And hi, I'm Steph Kafori, mom of three, a life coach living in sunny Hawaii. We are thrilled to have Justine Graham Herbert with us today. Hello, Justine.
Hi, my cousins. I love you guys.
Hi,
Love you
Justine.
too. You feel so close yet so far away.
That's right. Reaching through.
Through the internet vibes. So, Justine has an undergraduate degree in fine arts. She studied and traveled abroad and has worked in interior design and is also an artist. She has two graduate degrees, one in counseling psychology and the other in school counseling. She was fortunate to also be a stay at home mom with her kids until they were older and worked in school counseling for 4 years. She's now working towards her licensure in counseling psychology in Boise, Idaho.
Thank you.
Justine, we're so thrilled to have you. And listeners, Justine is our cousin, and we would love for you to begin with a quick twin story.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really touched. It's very nice to be here. Okay, here's my story. So I had just graduated from college, and you guys were so lovely and wonderful, my supportive group, and came down to Loyola in LA and celebrated with me. And so my mom's like, "Hey, let's go to Disneyland. What do you do?" So we went to Disneyland, and we were standing in line at the Matterhorn. And all of a sudden, you guys were like, "Oh my gosh, look over there. There's a, frozen banana, cart." And we are so hot. So you guys ran over there and you came back and you were munching on your bananas. And I just finished art, being an artist and at school. I mean, you find the craziest things in photos and descriptions. And I said, just without thinking, because you guys are 5 years younger, I said, "Man, those are pretty phallic." And you guys paused and you were like, "What's phallic?" And I was like, "Oh God, here we go. I have to explain to my sweet young cousins what phallic was." And you guys said that never again did you look at a banana and or other things phallic shaping the same.
Oh, Justine, as soon as you said Disneyland, I knew where this story was going. So we purposely ask our guests not to tell us the story ahead of time because we want our reaction to be real. And oh my gosh, I was thinking, oh no, I know where this is going, Steenie.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, I'm dying that you shared that. Hysterical.
Well, and Justine, you've always been our big sister and mentor. So not only did you teach us what a phallus is, you also have taught us all about boys and dating and all of the stuff that you don't want to discuss with other, adults like your parents. And so you've always been there for us
Oh,
through.
my honor. My honor. You guys are amazing. You guys taught me so much too. So love you guys.
Well, it's so wonderful to have you today, Justine, to chat with. And, as I was listening to Steph go through your amazing bio, and I just have to say from my heart, I just continue to be in awe and so impressed with your accomplishments. And Justine, when we initially chatted about having you on Twin Chat, you brought up the topic of your experience of having dyslexia and shame and how that has impacted your life. Your whole life you have struggled with this learning difference, and there are stories that you've never shared with us, and we are so grateful to have you here as you open up and share your journey with us. So I'd like to start just with the question of telling us about your journey with dyslexia and starting kind of at the beginning, even before you were diagnosed.
Yeah. So I was kindergarten where they probably started to notice. And, as a little kid, you don't really know that you're different or things are different because the teachers are amazing. And I went to a great school. I'm going to start with that. And surrounded by amazing people. But yeah, it was at first, I felt everything was fine until, my parents sat me down and said, we're going to have to repeat first grade. And that was sort of like, I didn't understand why. And that was kind of the big, like, more than knowing what dyslexia was, even though they got me a great book on it. I mean, dyslexia was I think it was kind of more new. It was starting to come out in the 80s, and more kids were being diagnosed. And there was this little pamphlet kind of thing. And I went through it and it said, "You're different." And I was like, I don't want to be different. I mean, of course, every little kid doesn't want to be different, but we are. And as I've gotten older, of course, I understand that. And I love that. And I've learned so much about dyslexia that there's so many wonderful gifts as well. For example, being in school, linear thinking is ideal. But for a dyslexic, it's not. And I'm definitely not linear. Anyone that knows me, I will like jumble around subjects and come back to it. And that's very typical. And luckily, I've really had people that have never really called me out on it, like, what's happening? But even though sometimes I'll walk away and feel silly because I didn't really say this whole story and or the way I wanted to. So, there's some, self shame that, I struggle with. So, and I never really talked to you guys about it because you were younger. So it's been interesting as I tell you stories, you're like, what? So I'm glad we're talking about it. It's still new for me, but yeah.
Well, I
So,
think anytime that we open up to vulnerability,
yeah,
right? And so Justine, just to clarify, it was in first grade then that you
that's right.
were formally diagnosed and then you repeated.
Right. So first grade repeated, and yeah, some of the things that would I started to notice later was that I would be when I'm reading something, I'd take it in, and sometimes when I took it in, it wasn't correct because sometimes words would disappear on the page or I'd skip over it, not realizing. Sometimes letters didn't. So when I'd read it would be, it wouldn't be the full word. And usually it was interesting because and all those simple words, which you think are easy, were actually difficult because from what I understand and what I've been told was that dyslexics a lot of times think in pictures, and and a, they're not words that are pictured. So as soon as you got to that word, your picture of what the comprehension isn't making sense. So sometimes you get tripped up on that. Other things like I would blend words. So instead of saying pumpkin, I'd say pumpkin all the time. And I'm sure, lots of kids do this, but it's pretty, I mean, this was something still like sometimes I have to really slow down and make sure I'm saying pumpkin. So I actually visualize the word. I'd say kabuzz instead of because. And, when you're a kid, that's cute. But of course, now I don't say kabuzz, but that was something that I would do. But yeah, I felt a little different. And then, even though I went to an amazing school and surrounded by great teachers, and of course, my parents were fantastic in discovering this early. I mean, that is kind of key and it's pretty rare. So I feel really lucky. Um, I'm very grateful. There were, some comments because I repeated first grade that kids would come up to me and say, "Are you stupid? How can you not pass first grade?" And so that was something that always stuck with me in my brain. And whenever I felt, that I was off, sometimes those words would come back. It's shocking. I'm, 40 something, and sometimes that shame still is there. So,
Well, and I think we think about the cruelty that can happen, right, with children, and they're not even, sometimes they're conscious of it, and sometimes it's subconscious that they're
totally.
just making an observation. And um I talk about this in episode 3, but I talk about the words abnormal and different, and how we have put that in a context to be such a negative thing. And when we're able to kind of look at those two words and shift the word to extraordinary,
Yeah.
how that changes it, right? That you are extraordinary with your differences. And it's not an abnormality. It's what makes, and you touched upon this a couple minutes ago, it makes you unique.
Yeah. And that's
And that
something,
is,
as any kid, we all kind of want to be the same, and as you get older, you start realizing, no, actually that's what creates me. My imperfections create, you know, me, who I really am. So, yeah. So,
yeah. So tell us, Justine, what it was like to walk in your shoes.
yeah. Some of the things that would happen also is that and to this day, I still have to read things over and over. Sometimes I'll again skip a word and it doesn't comprehend, it doesn't make any sense. So I was taught very young by my tutor, Mrs. Meggs, just use my finger, and I know that a lot of kids do that, but it's still something I still do sometimes, especially when I'm tired. I mean, that's really when it happens, because grad school, I mean, you have to learn to pick up that pace of reading, and I got better at it with time. Left and rights, I'm terrible. If I'm nervous in the car or whatever, or just like lefts and rights, I still sometimes take a look at my hands, the L for left. And but when I get nervous, I literally, things blank. So somebody might be like, okay, read this real quick, and I just freeze. It's a frozen feeling and just pure fear of reading out loud, because it is excruciating. um the sad thing is I cannot tell a joke. I cannot tell a joke, because I always end up like saying the punchline like a couple sentences before it's due, and then I'm like, oh, I did it again, I can't do the joke. So I've given up on doing jokes. But I've learned that I just really have to take good care of myself. I do have to rest a lot, especially if there's a lot of reading involved or any kind of mental work. So I do rest a lot, do a lot of self-care. So yeah.
Yeah, Justine, I vaguely have this memory of the word dyslexia when we were kids. And, I heard you just now sharing your struggles, and I was really drawn to the question of emotions that you felt. And can you dive a little deeper into those emotions that you felt growing up and still feel today?
Hmm. Well, I mean, it's interesting, when we were first talking about doing this, is that I never really, a lot of people, a lot of friends of mine, really close friends, and you guys even being my sisters and cousins, you don't know, I don't talk about it. And so it's more of a recent, discovery journey to go down that path. But ironic, and doing this video with you guys has like, brings up stuff and things that I didn't even realize. Like, for example, I didn't even realize that my birthday was always a reminder that I was older. So whenever I had my birthday, thinking about it, I'm like, oh, I'm a little, I was always a little embarrassed, because then I was always a year older, like a full year older. However, when it came to high school and I got my driver's license, I had a lot of fun with my friends in high school. I was driving.
Well, Justine, remember when we were thinking about you turning 16 when we were little kids, we said,
Yeah.
when you turn 16, will you drive us to the candy store?
And did we ever get there? I don't know. But there's a candy store here in Boise, so when you come visit, we're gonna go.
That was a trip then.
Yeah. No, yeah. So there were some goods, and your mom was always kind. My parents, always gave me a little extra ice cream or something, because I was the oldest with all of you guys too in our family. So, but yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, reading was hard. I always was worried that teachers might think I'm lazy, or you know, because I wasn't taking my time, but that wasn't it. I was taking more time, but still not getting stuff done on time. So that was frustrating. And then in elementary, for intervention, which is great, I would get, unfortunately, I'd get pulled out of class, that was kind of embarrassing. So, but,
Well, Justine, Kenyon and we were pulled out of class as well. Ours was for speech and spelling, and the teacher, the specialist, would come and stand in the doorway, and this was during reading. The teacher was doing reading circle time, and she would pull Kenan and I out, and we would go to a special room with another kid, and it was embarrassing because other kids were like, "Why are you leaving?" And Kenan, I mean, remember this? We didn't even want to leave. It was the best part of the day. It was reading time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it
I,
was really it was a big challenge. And I want to also just talk about shame as an emotion, and I want to weave into a little bit of my personal experience with shame. And I mentioned this in our first episode when Kenan and I introduced Twin Chat, and I talk about uh, my separation with my husband and I separated for a short amount of time, and actually it felt like a long time. Because it was our kids were small and we were having some issues, and we decided the best thing for our marriage was to take some time apart. And I kept it very close. I told a small group of friends, and I felt alone, and I felt really embarrassed, and I felt ashamed. And the thoughts that were around that were, the circumstance was, let's take the circumstance was I was separated from my husband. The circumstance around that is being separated is bad. People are going to judge us. Um, this doesn't feel good. It's hard. And so these thoughts all came up, and therefore I was in a space of shame and embarrassment. And and it was funny when I opened up to everyone on the first podcast was the first time I put it out there, right, to the universe. And there was a freedom in it, there was a release, and those thoughts were just thoughts about it, right? I could embrace those thoughts and say thank you for whatever you did to serve me, but now I release you, I don't need you. And then it took the power away from the circumstance of my separation, and it made it just a fact. We were separated. And to let my audience know, Jim and I are in a very good space. We're happy. We have our struggles still, as every marriage does, but we have worked really hard and we continue to work really hard. And I bring that back to your experience, Justine, because I think as we move through these emotions, I love that you're talking about this now, because I think our audience can relate. They can relate to some piece of maybe my story or your story, and they can feel like they are, one, they're not alone, but also they can move through it, right? We don't have to hold on to this and feel the shame and the embarrassment. Is that we can release it, and and then create whatever that life is that we want, that brings us joy and happiness, because that is our essence. That is the essence of our life, in my opinion. So I take that back um, to our conversation, Justine, and I'm curious. Can you tell me how your experience and moving through this emotion of shame in your life, and who's been your support? What have been your tools and your toolbox to really be the person that you are sitting in front of us today?
well, I mean, it's a lifetime of working on it, and sometimes it's unconscious working on it. But shame is a really tough thing. And for anyone out there who's still dealing with it and or has some, it takes time, a lot of time. And sometimes it's not fun to look at. So it's understandable that you want to pause on that. But with and I'm still actually working through a lot of the stuff. But when I was young, of course, you know, my parents and my brother were super supportive, and like my brother would play with me when because of the, you know, being repeated. I didn't know a lot of kiddos in the for the first couple of years. It took some time, but now, of course, I love these people. But my dad, you know, my husband, and now my super patient friends, when I am missing a word or something slips and I need a little support there, I feel off or whatever, you know, my family, of course. So having that, you know, outside support when things aren't clicking and I know it and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Can you help me with this? And so learning to ask for help is huge as well for all of us. That is huge. That's a very hard thing for me because, you know, constantly failing, the last thing you want to do is like, I also need help because I'm failing, I'm struggling with this, I also need help. So that's hard. But having that outside, those people that you can trust, that aren't going to hurt you or, you know, make fun of you or make some kind of comment like, really, it's been nice to have all those people, and there's a lot of them. So them, and oh yeah, and then making sure that I don't go down that rabbit hole, because you know, it's that like beating yourself up kind of stuff that happens a lot with shame. And so something, you know, having that outside support. I don't like playing the victim at all because I think that's not helpful. Um, but one thing that really helped me through school was art, and I'm, you know, it was the beacon to get me through English and math because I knew I was going to go to that art class and I was going to find success. And my classmates saw that saw that I also had success, so they tried to do the art that I would do, and they were like, whoa, that looks so good. And you know, for a kiddo, that's huge. And so art became kind of my beacon, and all the way through high school, I did really well in it and made me feel good. And then obviously I went on to Loyola and still painting to this day. Um, but you know, got time to travel. That also helps me find myself. When I lived in Italy, I remember my parents coming to visit and they're like, who are you? Like this confidence just came out. And because I went to a great small art school there in Italy, for study abroad, and it was just really powerful. But yeah, I mean, just all the small little successes, you know, interior design, working, I had that opportunity, and more traveling around the world in my 20s. I had a great chance to do some paintings for a few hotels and a few private residences. I have a few now too. So just small little successes, you know, and big ones too. So
And I'm going to put my plug in because I'm one of the people that is waiting patiently for my painting, Justine. But I have to tell our viewers just what an incredibly talented artist you are. And it really is, it's such a joy to not only see what you've created, but to know that now I'm recognizing too what an outlet that's been for you.
yeah.
And you know, I've always known that you've shined in the artistic capacity, and I've always said to myself, well, why didn't I get any of those genes? I mean, come on. Nobody in our family, Steph, we're not artists. Is Well, we're all artists in our own way, I know that, but I could not create what you do, and it's pretty incredible. And Justine, you know, you touched upon your parents and your mentor, your tutor.
Yeah.
I also know that you had mentioned to Stephanie and I that you have really gotten into some meditation that has been helpful to you as well with this journey. Do you want to dive a little more deeply into that with us?
Yeah, some of the things that also I should say that helped heal was actually when I went to graduate school for school counseling. I started seeing how the schools are working with kids with differences nowadays, and it's so much better. And just being around that environment really healed, and also made it open for me to start realizing, hey, I do have dyslexia and I don't have to be embarrassed about it. So that was kind of the beginning journey for me. It's really more recent. But another recent, well, the past several years, meta meditation. I found Sharon Salzberg. She wrote an incredible book called Loving Kindness, and she talks about meta meditation, which is a very ancient Buddhist meditation. It's very simple, and that's what I liked about it. Um, and it was something that I could do just walking around or whenever I thought about it, or if I woke up in the morning or right before bed. And it's just 4 phrases, and you can make up your own phrases, but I chose the ones that she had, which is, may I live in safety, may I have mental happiness, may I have physical happiness, and may I be at ease of well-being. And those you say over and over, nice and slowly and calmly. And I notice sometimes I try to rush it. I'm like, what am I rushing to get to? I'm just rushing to repeat it. So slow down, And what I felt like the meta meditation did was it helped me unconsciously, without really realizing, shut down some of that chatter that's negative. Because I would make a mistake and then I'd be like, oh, wait, I'm okay. And I was surprised at my reaction, because before I'd be like, what were you thinking? And, that hard edge that you can be on yourself. And Sharon Salzberg also talks about that. And so, and she talks about her frustration with meditation sometimes, because it's not easy. It's not easy to take the time. And then once you do, whoa, you put in that work, and yes, it's work, but you put in that work and you'll find some success.
Oh, that's beautiful, Justine. And Ken and I was just thinking about our mindfulness meditation and how you've brought that into your classroom. And I'd love to hear some of the ways you've incorporated that.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I do want to say also, Justine, as an educator, I'm so sad that they're cutting art from the public schools.
Oh, yeah.
And our school does not have an art program. And when I hear these stories about how art, again, was this saving grace in your life,
That's right.
and I feel very lucky because in my experience, I've had a lot of parents that have been volunteers to come into my classroom and teach art. But on the whole, that's something we really need to look at as a piece that it's such an important, it needs to be part of the curriculum and not just expected that it's integrated. I do think art should be integrated into our lessons, but also specific art classes. So anyway, that's aside. But as far as the mindfulness stuff, yeah, that has been incredible. And my students look forward to it. I wish there was more time in the day because I would do it every day if possible. But this year, I mean, I know we're under different circumstances to begin with, but I've only had time to do it once a week with the students. But it truly is something that they love, and it brings such a it's a calmness
Calmer.
that
Yeah.
brings, it in an awareness, right? So it's not like, oh, I'm trying to help you reach something or get somewhere, but hey, when you need to, you can just use your breath.
Yeah.
Anchor your feet into the ground. Take some time to be present in your breath, your body, and feeling what arises. So
Right.
it is, I love that our school also has embraced mindfulness as something that teachers are adopting, all teachers are adopting. But again, it's new for a lot of schools. It's not something that is a norm. But I feel grateful that our school is really invested in that. So,
Well, it brings the temperature down, right? People are talking about temperature nowadays with what's going on in the world. And if you just take that moment, I mean, there was this example where just when you're going to get in your car, you know how we're like in a rush to just get in the car, get the car started, go. Well, instead of just jumping in the car, starting going, maybe either just start the car and pause, take a breath, and get conscious, because you're about to drive a vehicle, right? And then you're about to move on to that journey, whatever you're doing that day. So I always try to remember that. Okay, turning the car on, pause, take a deep breath, and just be present. And it's pretty cool.
Well, I love that, Justine, and what you said earlier too. So it's that presence, and it's that, and you mentioned this when you did your mantras and your meditation, is taking the time. There's no rush, right? There's no rush to get through anything. Um, I know that we live in a fast-paced world, right? So we do feel the constraint of the outer world, that we have to be from A to B at a certain amount of time. But that split second, like I have a reminder on my phone that comes up every day for gratitude and appreciation. And whether that's gratitude and appreciation within my heart, sometimes I just send a text to my husband and I say, thank you. Thank you for whatever it is. Thanks for doing the dishes last night. Thank you for, supporting me. Thank you for loving our children. And that gratitude is a place of expansion for all of us when we can come from a place of that. And then those moments of rush and stress, and they seem a little bit more manageable. And one thing that I love also, and I wanted to share with our audience, I'm really into mantras and I'm into intentions. And I worked with a coach a couple of years ago, and she helped me come up with my mantra that I've been saying for the last few years. And I wanted to share it with all of you. So, and I say it at least once a day, sometimes multiple times a day. So, I trust the process and mystery of life. I have an abundance of love, health, wealth, and happiness. And it just brings a smile to my face. My whole being feels light when I say that. It brings me joy and peace, and also excitement for what's going to happen when we surrender into the mystery of life. So I thank you everyone for listening to that. And one last question for you, Justine, is what is one thing you do for yourself to maintain well-being and self-care in your life?
Well, like one thing, there's multiple, but humor. You guys know that I love to laugh. I love to joke around. I love to especially joke about myself because I can't take myself too seriously. So I think humor and that laughter is ultra important. And whenever I'm getting down, I think that can raise how you're feeling. So it's super important. And one other, being spontaneous, like just doing something different or taking, just getting in the car, let's see where we're going or something like that. I don't know.
Justine, I don't know if you know this, but I taught laughing yoga, and I would
I've never heard of that.
You don't know? Okay, so you can actually you can trick your brain into thinking it's real laugh, that it will release the exact same endorphins just by fake laughing. So I literally, and I will just start it like right now. and the class, like people would think I was crazy in this class, and they would sort of be like embarrassed at first, but then I would just keep going, and I'm so loud that my laughter would literally bounce off the walls in the yoga studio, and the people couldn't help because I think they were actually laughing at me. But I didn't care, because it was, as long as they got the laughter in there and they felt that joy, that was the objective. It was beautiful, and people left feeling light and happy. They're like, wow, thanks for the class. And I'd be like, you're welcome. Namaste.
And I would like the audience to know that was Steph. She led the laughing yoga class. Kenan, yes, I did attend one, and it was amazing, but that was all Steph. We just have to make that note.
And when us three get together, we tend to cackle together, so it's pretty loud.
It's genetic. It's genetic.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I miss you guys.
We miss you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Justine. Thank you so much. And thank you to our audience for joining us. and tuning into Twin Chat. And don't forget to subscribe or turn on your notifications on YouTube, and follow us on Apple or Spotify. And you can also find us on Instagram at Rise Life Coach. And have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day and week. And we'll tune in with you guys next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Justine.
Thank you
You're
guys.
best.
Love you.
Bye.